What's up guys, we got another one for you here. Today we're going to be replacing the rear backing plates on an 06 F250. Now this is going to work on all F250s from 1999 to 2007. The very first thing we got to do is jack up the back of this truck and get this tire off. Next we're going to be removing this caliper. We're just going to remove the whole thing. And in order to do that, we got one bolt here and one bolt here that we're going to be taking off. Make sure you hang up your caliper. That just keeps it from hanging on your brake line and damaging that. Next, we can remove this rotor. Well, it did take a lot of fighting, but I finally got this thing out. You can see that that shield is completely trashed. So what we did is we ended up breaking that shield off, getting back there with a screwdriver, and we pushed on that little ratchet that expands these brakes. That was able to compress them enough to where we could actually pull that rotor off. Now that we got all that out of the way, we're gonna remove this hub bearing. So we're gonna release these bolts here and then pull this axle out. A little tip, we're just doing this one side at a time. That way that axle is leaning downwards and most of that gear oil gets pushed to the other side. That'll just help you lose the least amount of oil. All right, axle is out, so I'm gonna be using this tool here to remove that nut. And this is the Powerbilt tool. There's the model number. I will throw a link down in the description where you can order it on Amazon. It comes with all different sizes that you're gonna need. I'm just going to pull this hub and whole bearing assembly out. Just make sure you catch that bearing. You don't want that falling to the ground. I'm going to pull these brakes out now. I'll start with this bottom spring, then I'll take out this ratcheting mechanism, and then I'll start pulling out these top springs up here. You can use pliers or you can use cutters to do this. In order to remove this e-brake actuator, that's this lever here, I have to access the back side. This spring I'm going to have to pull back, and then this metal clip under here, I'm going to have to push down on all the little tabs, pull this out, and then there's a slot in the back here where that whole cable will be released. So I didn't use any special tools to do that. It does help if you have a buddy, so go out and grab your friend. Now, I used a pair of vice grips and I put it in between the spring and I used that to pull it back. I then used a 1/4 inch wrench. I stuck it in between the spring and that bracket. And then I used a pair of needle nose pliers to just slowly work those little clips around, and I was able to slide it out that way. So in order to disconnect the actuator bracket from the cable, there's this little square piece in the back. You got to pull this spring up around like 90 degrees and then you can work it off. We need to remove our backing plate, at least what's left of it, from this bracket, so I'm gonna have to take this bracket off. There are 4 nuts in the back here to remove that bracket. The easiest way to do this is to make these nuts flush with this bolt and then just take a hammer and tap this out. So these studs actually hold that backer plate on. So what I'm gonna do is put the nut back on this bolt. I'm gonna put it on flush and that'll just protect the threads, and I'm gonna take a hammer and I'm gonna beat each one of them out. And I'm gonna use a board just to hold it up off the ground. We're not ready to put on this dust shield. You want it in this orientation where this is like a bowl and this little slot's at the top. This slot's gonna line up with this slot. This piece will be at the top. We'll put it on, but before we put it on, we do want to put the boot on first. Each one of these studs gets driven in from this side. Now go ahead and put this bracket on, and I'm going to torque these nuts down to 100 foot-pounds. Couple things I did, I cleaned up the axle, and then I also sprayed this cavity coater onto this shield. This is the 3rd set of shields that this truck has had, so maybe this will help. This might make it worse, I don't know, but we're gonna give it a try. I'm gonna put this brake actuator back in, and I did throw some grease in there. If yours is seized up, make sure you break that free and then grease it up. So it just gets inserted in this orientation where this front fork is facing the front of the vehicle. And that goes right into that rubber boot. So now we can put our emergency brake cable on. We're gonna do it the same way we took it off, where we're gonna put it in that 90-degree angle and spin it onto this little hook. Now we can pull our spring back, and then we'll be able just to slide this piece back into our little clip here. We have all these raised tabs, and now that's where the brake pads actually rub, so I'm gonna put some grease on each one of those. So in order to put these pads back on, I already hooked up the top spring. I'm just gonna bend it and pull it around here. Now this little notch is gonna go into our fork. I went ahead and threw the ratchet in just to help hold these apart. We have this little rod here. The fat end goes on the back, and we'll slide that through that hole there. It'll go through the pad, and then there's this spring clip that will attach right over top of it. Pull the adjuster out. That was just in there to help hold it. I can get this spring in. And now that that spring is in, I'll be able to pull this pad apart and put our adjuster back in. You want the ratchet towards the front of the vehicle. I believe it was installed incorrectly on this when we pulled it off. And make sure your adjuster is seated in these notches in the shoe. When we can install a retaining clip, it's the same way. This fat end is going to be on the back side. So I'm going to prepare the hub to go back onto the axle, and there's a seal on the back side of it, so I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver and I'm going to pop that out. Now this is a sealing surface, so I'm going to try to clean up this edge and clean this up as much as possible. I did throw a rag in there just to keep most of that debris from falling into that bearing. I cleaned up the surface real good. I took the bearing out of that hub. I'm gonna spray some gear oil in here just to give it a nice coat. Then I'm gonna put that bearing back in. We're now good to put the seal onto the hub. Here's the part number of that seal. So in order to seat the seal, I'm gonna take this board and put it on top of it, and I'm just gonna take a mallet and tap it down in. You wanna make sure that that seal goes down evenly. If you see it start to go one way, start tapping it the other way. We're now ready to put this hub back onto the axle. That seal does seal against this part of the axle here, so we just took a little bit of Scotch-Brite and cleaned that up. You want to make sure you don't have any burrs or anything that's going to compromise that seal. We're going to do the same exact thing with our outer bearing. We're just going to put a little bit of gear oil on it, and we can get that back into the hub. We're going to put our nut on. Now your nut has a little tab on it. You have to line up that tab with the groove in the axle. Now I'm going to go ahead and torque this nut down to 60 foot-pounds. If you're reinstalling the same bearing that you took out, you're going to declick it 7 times. If you're installing a new bearing, you're going to declick it 5 times. So we're going to declick this 7 times. So I'm going to reinstall the axle now. Now your axle does have an O-ring on the bottom here. Check the condition of that, make sure it's good. And then I also sprayed a little bit of gear oil in here just to lubricate this surface for that O-ring when this axle goes in. You're going to have to lift up on that axle a little bit and spin it around so the splines line up, and it'll slide right in. You can line up the holes in your hub to your axle. I'm going to be installing these axle bolts. I'm going to use blue thread locker, and I'm going to tighten them to 60 to 80 foot-pounds. Check your manual for your torque spec. I'm going to be reinstalling the rotor, and when I put it on, I'm going to be feeling how much drag these brake pads are putting on it, and then I'm going to be adjusting it till I feel a little bit of pressure, and that should be good. So in order to test this, you can see that the brake's loosened up now, and then I can pull that back, and it doesn't go extremely far back, and that locks it up, so I know that that's adjusted properly. we're good to go ahead and get our brake caliper back on, and then the 2 bolts that we took off, those get torqued down to 150 foot-pounds. So the driver's side of the vehicle is the exact same process, except for that axle nut, the one you have to use the special tool on, that's reverse threads. And the very last step is to put these tires back on. I hope you guys learned something today. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I will see you on the next one.